few results, then just calculate the solution for the contact between two cylinders. Then here you have the dimension of the cylinder. Then both cylinders have the same diameter. In fact, the radius is 20 millimeters for each cylinder. There is a given length for a given normal load in Newton, because here this is in Newton. One material is in steel, then the Young modulus is 210 gigapascal. The other one is in nitride silicium, which is a Young modulus of 310 gigapascal, and they have the same Poisson ratios, which is 0.3. Then I would like first, if you can use the Excel sheet, if you can calculate the parameter of the contact. I will do the same by myself. Then first calculate the maximum pressure. The contact half width. Also the maximum Tresca shear stress and the depth. Then you should know that it should be about 0.3 times the maximum contact pressure. The depth at which this stress is maximum. In the second sheet, you can have the equivalent Tresca shear stress. This one is a double of the equivalent Tresca shear is a double of the Tresca shear stress, and the maximum von Mises stress. Just to discuss and to see all these values. Okay, then this is just a simulation. You just have to put the correct value for that. Then the second question will be to make the equivalent problem of a cylinder on a flat surface. Then this time one body will be elastic, but you have to calculate the equivalent plastic properties. I'm not familiar with it. And the question here is to calculate correctly the equivalent Young modulus, and also the equivalent radius of the cylinder. And then I would like to have a look on the Tresca shear stress. This is maybe not the Tresca shear stress, it is, I think, in the file I gave you, it's equivalent Tresca stress. Stress. And then the idea is to compare the effect of different friction coefficient. I will do the same as you. And the last point on for that will be to investigate the effect of the Poisson ratio. Then I remember that to you that if the Poisson ratio is equal to 0.5, you have an incompressible material, such as rubber. And if the Poisson ratio equals 0, it corresponds in fact to plane stress, because the stress along the axis of the cylinder will be equal to 0, because the stress is minus the Poisson ratios times the sum of the other principal stress. Then if you can do that, you will see some interesting results. And after, we can do or not simulation with a sphere, but I think it's not very, very important. And also, if you can have a look on the effect of the pressure on first the viscosity, and the idea is to calculate the viscosity at the ambient pressure, which is in fact the data, and then you calculate the viscosity at different pressure, and you compare the result to the initial one to see how it increases with pressure. And the last small exercise is what happens when you calculate the film thickness. You can take whatever of the formula I gave you, and you just try to see the effect of the speed of the load and so on, how the film thickness is changing. If you multiply by 2 or by 10 the load or the speed or the material parameter, what is the effect on the film thickness? Okay. I will do the same by myself. Maybe I can. Maybe it's too. Then I will. Maybe. Okay. Then okay, I will. Okay. Okay, now if I do that, okay, then the length is 15 millimeter. 15 millimeter. The radius is 20 millimeters, and the diameter is 40 millimeter for each cylinder. Then this is the real problem. The normal load is 10,000 Newton. This is correct for the steel. This is ceramic. Okay. Then the solution should be here. Okay. The size of the contact is 0.248, almost 1/4 of millimeter. This is half size of the contact. The maximum contact pressure is 1.7 gigapascal, which is reasonable. It can be for a gear application, for example, or for a roller bearing application. The depth at which the maximum stress is 194 micrometers. The maximum Tresca shear stress is 513 megapascal. Something interesting here is that we can calculate the rigid body displacement, which is the sum is 16 micrometers, which is very small. And you can see there is two values, delta 1 and delta 2. Delta 1 is for steel, delta 2 is for ceramic. Then, of course, the steel material will deform more than the ceramic because the stiffness is lower. Okay. And these are the Hertz solution, in fact. Now, if you want to have a look on On the stress, then this is only for the normal contact problem. Okay, then let's have a look on the maximum stress. Then, okay, this is a classical Young modulus for both materials. And okay, then you have the von Mises stress in orange, the Tresca shear stress in red versus depth, and then okay, Tresca is this one, and von Mises this one. Then you can see that the maximum for the Tresca shear stress is 0.6 times the pressure, and because Tresca stress is the double of the shear stress, you can find 0.3. We find the same solution, and the depth at which we get the solution. Why the depth? Okay, this is this one. Okay, then it should be. Okay, it's at 0.785. No, it's this one. Okay, 0.75 times the contact half width. Now we can. Okay, I can check the effect of the Poisson ratios. Then maybe it's too big. I can reduce the size. Okay, now if we assume that the Poisson ratios is equal to 0.5 for a rubber, this is what we found. You can see that this time the shear stress and the von Mises stress are nil at the surface. Okay, this is exactly what there is in the Johnson book. This is for a rubber contact. Then we find again the same solution, just a difference in what I plotted before. It was the shear stress, then the radius of the biggest circle of Moore. And because here, when you are in 2D problem, you have a relation between the stress in the third direction, which is for me sigma yy, which is given here. Okay, and this one, this is the equation, and the first cell corresponds to the Poisson ratios. Okay, and the two other terms correspond to, in fact, to sigma xx and sigma zz. Then, if you replace the Poisson ratios by 0, this stress will be equal to 0. Then you reach the plane stress contact problem. And I put 0 up. Don't know what I did. Not like that. This is up. Okay. And then you can see this time that the maximum stress for a frictionless contact is not below the surface, this is at the surface. In fact, this is very useful for me because I used to do that with my student with finite element software, mostly with Abacus. And when you check the figure, the plot of stress, when you see that the maximum is at the surface, I know that they choose the wrong element. They choose with Abacus if it is 2D, it's a CPE or CPS. Continuous plane E means epsilon, strain, and CPS S means sigma, means stress. Then because by defect, Abacus propose a plane stress element. And very often the students, they don't check, they do not decide which type of element they choose. And for me, it's very simple to detect this error, because just to see if the maximum is at the surface or below the surface. Okay, then now let's go back to the solution for a rubber, for example, here. And now I will show you. You can do that by yourself if you have the Excel file. Okay, let's go back to the rubber. And now I will go and make some simulation with friction. Then again, I will take the same value, 0. And now a friction coefficient, I will use 0. Okay, then oh, I say 0.5. 0.5. Okay. Okay, then this is the same figure. Then now what is interesting is to see the change. Okay, just have a look only on these two figures. This is the von Mises stress and the Tresca stress. Okay. Now observe what will happen if I change the friction coefficient. I have we have many students in the department. In fact, in mechanical engineering, we have 1,100, little more, students in mechanical engineering for 3 years. Then the year before the master, and then we have per year more than 350 students. Then a lot of students are doing internship in companies. A lot of students are doing projects in the lab, and we have to take care of them. And sometimes when they work in a company, a lot of students are doing finite element simulation. And sometimes they do simulation without friction or with friction. The first thing I like to say is that when you have a very low friction coefficient, it's not useful to perform a simulation with a friction coefficient, because there is no effect. Okay, then you will see that. For example, if you have a friction coefficient with a value of 1%, then 1% is this value. Okay. Now just check the change on these two curves. Did you see the change? It's a very, very little change. The stress is no more 0 at the surface. It's slightly higher than 0. I put again 0. Okay. Now let's try 2%. Okay. So it's a very slight change. Very, very small change, but almost nothing. Let's try 10%. Okay, now there is some effect. Okay, it means that if you have a friction coefficient which is below 3%, it doesn't matter to do a simulation with or without friction coefficient. Now it is if it is in the order of 1/10, 10% or more, you can perform a simulation with that. But still, the effect is very, very small. Now let's go to 20%, then 0.2. Okay, there is some effect. However, the maximum stress is still below the surface, at the Hertzian depth. Okay. Then to have the maximum at the surface, you should exceed at least 0.3, 30% of friction. Okay, here we are. Then you have a maximum at the surface and a maximum here. And now the maximum will be always at the surface. Okay. And if you have, like for blade and disc attached, contact or clutch, brake, for example, 0.6. Okay, the maximum is really at the surface. and the maximum stress is far higher than at the Hertzian depth. I don't know if it is easy to find that here, but okay, this is what I wanted to show you for that, for the first part of the question I asked you. Now, what is the equivalent problem? Okay, you can you have the value here, just to keep them in memory. To max equal Z. Okay, then there is two operations to perform to do that. The first one is to calculate the equivalent radius. Then I said before that we have two radius of 20 millimeter. Okay, and the first thing I should do is here. Okay, I should modify one of the radius. For example, I keep the top, and I use then 10 millimeter, which means that the diameter is 20 millimeter. The other one is a flat surface. Then the radius should be very, very large. For example, 1 exponential plus 90. Okay, this is a flat surface. The load is the same. Now for the material, I will consider that the bottom surface will be rigid. Then I will use for the Young modulus something which is very, very large. Again, the same. That means plus. Now, what is the Young modulus for the equivalent cylinder? In fact, initially, if I consider this is in the slide before, but remember I use something like that. Okay, I define different equivalent Young modulus, and I'm not sure, but maybe it should be something like that times this one. Okay, it depends which definition you take, but anyway, the problem should be the same with the initial materials, which is steel plus ceramic, and the equivalent problem, and the equivalent one is we have a third material, which is elastic equivalent, and the last one is rigid. This is in fact, this is in the opposite. It is not like that. Let me do that like that. It's better. Then this term tends to 0. And now if you assume that you have the same Poisson ratios for steel, ceramic, and for the equivalent material, then you have okay. And then now if you replace, it means that this is the equivalent Young modulus. It will be, for this case, I think it's 125 and 200 megapascal, something like that. If you calculate that, I think here, this is in Pascal, then in Pascal, it will be yes, but you can see here this is I use yes divided by 2, but now it's wrong because this is not a calculation. This is just intermediate results. I need to no this is because I changed the Young modulus of the other one. Okay, no. Here, should be. Okay, this is then the solution here is and then if you do that, you can see that you find exactly the same solution. Okay, and the same also for delta, for the elastic deflection, you find the same solution. Of course, the rigid surface has no deformation. Everything is taken by the elastic body. Okay, then just to show you that it works, and you have the same solution. And if you plot the stress field and so on, everything will be the same. Okay. Okay, then we can do the same for the stress for sphere on flat surface. Just what I wanted to show you. Okay, in fact, the question was for. I wanted to discuss about here the location of where we can find the maximum tensile stress. Then this is in this file. Okay, then this is the same. Okay. Okay, and these are the results. Then, okay, this is there is different plot. This is over the y-axis, but there is two axes, y and x. But because this is a sphere on a flat surface, the results are the same. They will be different if you have something which is elliptical, but because this is a sphere, on the right and on the left, you have the same result. What you can observe here is that the maximum stress is this one, because and it is positive, it means this is tensile stress. Okay? Then this is the most critical point, which is at the surface. Okay? And where is this point? In fact, this is sigma von Mises, and the sigma von Mises correspond in fact to the contribution of sigma yy, the pink curve. Okay. Then sigma, because this is a y-axis, this is a sphere on a flat surface. This is the y-axis, and then sigma yy correspond to this stress. Okay. In fact, you can because this is axis symmetric, you can replace y by r, and this is sigma r, the radial stress. Okay, and then the maximum value is for this stress at the surface, and if you look at the point, then I should find this, the maximum of this point. Or maybe I will move that. Here, this is the maximum, which is which can be very, very high, because if the maximum contact pressure is, for example, 2 gigapascal or 3 gigapascal, you may have a tensile stress which is very, very significant.
At the edges, you have a little peaking of the stresses, right?
Yes, on both sides. And this is the radial stress. Okay.
This is because of the corners.
No, there is no corners because this is a sphere on a flat surface.
So this is the Hertzian cracking. It causes the Hertzian stresses, tension.
Yes, it's in tension. Then if you look at where is this value is just here, which is just in fact at this point. Okay, and when this is higher than 1, it means that this is outside the contact, and when it is smaller, then you can see the maximum is just at the border of the contact. And if you take a top view of that, this is the contact radius, A, and the maximum stress is just at the border. And it's like that. Then for steel, you won't see any crack, because when you end on steel, you have a plastic deformation, you'll have a print, which is very nice. Now, if you indent brittle materials, ceramic or glass materials, you will find like that circular crack. Okay, and when you find this one, you can be sure that it was when the contact area was just at this diameter or radius. You can calculate the load. You know the load. You can determine the stress that happened. And if you continue to load, you will observe later other rings, other cracks like that. Okay. And this is also a way to determine the limit stress for cracking in tensile. Okay. Okay, then this is what I wanted to show you for the Hertz theory. And now I would like to show you a few things about Okay, the effect of parameters on piezo, maybe the viscosity first. Okay, as you can see, I took the pressure viscosity coefficient, which is a classical value for classical oils, for many oils, which is 2 the power minus 8. Then whatever is the viscosity, we can say that ambient pressure, the ratio is 1. Okay. Now this is 1 bar, 10 bar, 100 bar, 1000, 10,000, etc. Okay. Let's have a look on the viscosity with the Barus. This is the Barus law. Yep. 10 bar. Okay, you have 2% increase of the viscosity, which is negligible. This is why in journal bearings we assume that this is always isoviscous. Okay, even if you consider 100 bars. Okay, there is 22% of increase, not too much. Now let's go to 1 gigapascal. Okay, you jump from 1 to almost 0.6 billion. Okay, just for 1 gigapascal, which is not huge because it's very easy in a ball bearing to reach 1 gigapascal. Very, very easy. Now, if you reach I'm not very good with that. Okay, this is with 2 gigapascal. You can see the viscosity. Okay, then this is why I said it is in the glassy state. Okay, we have to be careful because with the Barus law, they did experiments many years ago, maybe 1 century ago or maybe more, and it's just an extrapolation of measurement at a very low pressure. Then you have to be very careful. This is why it is better to use Rowlands or WLF model, but you can see the change of viscosity. Okay.
Almost behave like at 10,000 bar. It's behaving like almost steel ladder.
Yes, yes, yes. There is another way to look at that. In fact, for example, if you calculate the elastic deflection between a ball and a flat surface, and if you compare the elastic deflection compared to the film thickness change due to the pressure, okay, this is what we will do now. Okay, you have in mind just before for the cylinder, we had a deflection of 14 micrometers. 14 micrometers, which is not too much, but it's easy to reach 60, 70, 100 micrometers if you have a higher load. And then for here, for example, this is H mu. Okay, this is the same principle. Okay. I took this equation. I don't remember which one is, but okay. The first one is a variation of film thickness with speed, u. Second one with the load, and third one with the Young modulus or the viscosity pressure coefficient. Okay. Now, okay, try to change the load. Then instead of not the load, the speed. The speed now is not 1, is 2. What is the effect on the film thickness? Okay, I will. No, I need to. Okay. If you double the speed, you increase the film thickness by 68%. This is the effect. Okay. If now you multiply the speed not by 2 but by 10, and you keep the same other parameters, the increase is by 5 times. Okay. Then the speed is the main important parameter. really the main important parameter. Now we can do the same for the load. If you double the load, you decrease the film thickness because it's a negative power. Typically, this one is yes, this one. I think it's for elliptical contact. You decrease by 4.5%. This is a very small change. Okay, and even if you multiply by 10, the load, you decrease by 15%. And if you compare the change, because the film thickness at the origin it is maybe 0.1 or 0.2 micrometers, if you compare that to the elastic deflection of the steel, it will be 1 order of magnitude or 2 order of magnitude smaller. This is why then you have to think about that. The lubricant within a contact is mostly like a solid. This is how it behaves. And this is what I wanted to show you for that. You have all the materials. You can play with that. I gave you also some data. That I use. I give that to my colleagues sometimes, but okay. Then for the mobile oil lubricant, you have all the parameters there to calculate the different viscosity, the conductivity, the thermal conductivity, and all the coefficients to calculate the change of the viscosity with temperature and with pressure. Everything is here. There is also the double LF parameter, which are here. Then also in the document there is the paper which is related to that, and also I have the same data for 2 or 3 space lubricant that I use that are used for satellite.
So this Barus law.
Here normally alpha is for the Barus law. This one.
So Barus law says that if the pressure increases, viscosity increases from the base velocity, ambient velocity.
Yes.
So if you want good lubrication, you have to start with a thicker lubricant. Eta 0 is the ambient viscosity, right? At the
Yes.
So
Ambient and pressure and temperature.
yeah. So we don't have any other law which, or fluids following another law which says that even because of some, let's say, the constituents of the liquid, for smaller ambient viscosity, you can have very high viscosity at high pressures. At ambient, it is very low. Like, let's say ISO VG32, which is an aircraft engine. They use and alpha. So the eta 0 e to the power minus alpha p, right? Barus law. Now eta 0 is a multiplicative this thing of this law. Is there any other law which says that eta 0 some constant plus an increase? So the final viscosity is independent of the ambient viscosity. No. Or is there any liquid like that?
No, don't think so.
That's why we add additives these days, right? At a certain, because at ambient it might be low viscosity. This happens in wind turbines. That's why I'm asking you. Not in India, but in northern parts of the world, where they get so thick, ISO VG 360, that you can't move the gearbox. You have to heat it up now, right?
Yes.
So can we have a ISO VG 32, but at very low temperatures, because of certain changes or additives, the viscosity goes very high. It doesn't follow the Barus law then.
Just as I said before, the Barus law is just an extrapolation of some measurement at low pressure. In fact, you have to be careful with that. But if you take the Roland's law or the WLF law, they follow the Barus law at the beginning, and after they start to change, to diverge. But it's exponential at the beginning. It's always the same.
Is it applicable to the same oils, or is it for different kinds of oils or liquids, fluids?
No, this is applicable for oil and grease, because grease is made mostly of base oil. 80%, between 65 and 95%, but it's like when you calculate the film thickness for a grease, you consider the base oil. Then it's the same. No, it's applicable for everything. Not for solid, because if you have granular media, it's not the same, but no, it's applicable.
And this high viscosity at high pressure is coming because the molecules are coming closer.
Yes. There is some, okay, if you are interested by that, okay, there is what we call the Caro law. It's like a French name, but okay, there is some work by them. But if you want to have also some nice work on that, you have to see the paper by Scott Baer. Scott Baer is the most famous engineer working on that from Georgia Tech. So he published many papers, and he used to give the properties of many type of lubricants. For me, I just work on this one and some space lubricants, but this is the same trends. Then when you have the star here, this is an integral of the WLF law, and you can see this coefficient is not too different from 2 to the power minus 8, 10 to the power minus 8, and it is slightly different from the Barus coefficient, but not very, very different. There is less than 10% difference between both. And you can see the value.
All these oils have very high alpha, right?
It's not very high alpha. Alpha is changing between 1 and 3, 10 to the power minus 8. They are changing between, but they have a strong effect on the film thickness if you want to be accurate.
Right. And so, for example, water.
Yes.
Alpha is 0.
Should be 0.
It is 0.
Close to 0.
So it doesn't. So water cannot be used as a lubricant.
Yes. Yes. Now I don't know the value for because the kerosene, for example, kerosene there is some coefficient, but I didn't find that in the literature. Now, I don't know what is the coefficient for kerosene, but if you put 1 or 2 or 3% of oil within the kerosene, you can take a few percent of the property of the oil and can do simulation with that.
So the kerosene or ATF, the problem is that the alpha is very low.
Yes, but not nil. It's better than water.
Better than water.
Yes, far better.
Better than water.
But I tried several times to find in the literature the value, but I never found it. I think that some people did that, but it should be private and they did not publish what they did. But in the lab, we never measured the piezo viscosity of the kerosene.
You have the ball on disc for measuring that interferometer rings you were showing, right?
Yes.
You can put kerosene on that and measure it. Old kerosene.
Yes, but to get these properties, in fact, you need to do experiments at high pressure. Then, I said before, in a pressurized cylinder. Then we didn't do that in the lab.
No, we can also do it with the ball on disc and.
Yes, by reverse method, you can try to estimate, but it is more difficult, I think, because there is many parameters. It's better to directly measure the viscosity at different temperature and different pressure. You will have more easily all the parameters.
So do you have that setup in Cellular?
Yes, we have the setup, yes. This is not mine. This is the setup of Philippe Vergne used to work on that.
Okay.
Now he's retired. He should be emeritus, but he's not very often in the lab. And okay, I don't know what they do. And maybe they did some measurement for some companies, but because it's private, I don't know the result. But if there is something interesting to do, I think it should be interesting to do.
We did some work. That's why I'm asking you actually if it has been done. Because water is used in journal bearings, like in marine.
Yes.
But those bearings are not metal. They are polymer bearings actually. So the other thing is that transient. Are we going to do a problem on transient also just now? Transient loading.
No, I didn't prepare anything on transient
Can we
loading.
go back to the transient
Yes, yes,
loading?
of course, of course. VHL is not this one. Maybe this one. Okay, what do you want to know?
So if we go to that Reynolds equation which you had, yeah. So this equation, we use it for journal bearings also. In my case, one was referring to Sommerfeld number just now. This equation basically gives number 2 and then line number 2 that if the gradient of increase of pressure is positive, then the change of thickness with time will also be positive. So that means thickness will increase if you increase pressure. So this happens in journal bearings when you have in an IC engine, when the loading comes, one side. So the stiffness increases actually. So, but this here we have applied to a ball bearing, and then because the pressure is now as per Barrow's law, so we get that exponential. But this is also applicable for other things also, right? For other slider bearings, hydrodynamic bearings also.
Yes, yes.
Where the the thickness increases when pressure suddenly goes into a transient like this. Right.
Yes, but I said before, the increase of viscosity will be quite limited. But there is some increase, of course. It depends.
Although for Sommerfeld number, it is derived without considering del H by del T. That is why Keswan was asking. So the squeeze term is not taken into account for Sommerfeld number for the journal bearing.
Yes.
That's why it doesn't take this into account.
Yes, I think this is in a paper from 2006. This is published in something which is from 2006. And I know that after 6 months, I came back to the lab and said, okay, we did the experiments, it was running perfectly, and the device has been launched in space, and no problem. But I don't know 10 years after what happened.
So this is this bearing which you are referring to is
Yes.
In vacuum.
Yes, it's there is different technology, a difference between Europe and the US. In Europe, most of the time, the bearings are lubricated with liquid. For example, yes, or you may have a cage, which is a porous cage that retains some lubricant. And then, of course, this is in vacuum, but they seal the mechanism in order to keep the oil within the bearing chamber, or when you want to keep the lubricant, because the lubricant on the mirror would be catastrophic. You will vaporize the lubricant, and it will go everywhere on the electronic device or on the mirror. And,
So this is okay. So it is in vacuum, you are saying.
yes. And now if you
It's only those liquids like PFP and all that which you. This is European Space Agency, right?
ESA. In fact, there is 2 agencies. There is ESA, European Space Agency, and also we have CNES in France, which is a National Center of Spatial Studies, Centre National d'Études Spatiales. Then it was done with for the CNES.
And both use liquid lubricants.
Yes.
Because NASA uses solid lubricants.
Yes. Oh, what I said, dry contact or lubricated with solid lubricant. Yes.
I think ISRO also uses liquid lubricants. Right? Both.
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 And also now one of the question is what happens when you use nitrogen or when you use hydrogen to lubricate something, because of course for the rocket engines you lubricate the bearings with oxygen or with hydrogen and so on, but now a lot of people try to build new engine with hydrogen, liquid hydrogen, then it can be a lubricant too, and it's quite complicated to get the properties of the fluid.
So there alpha is known.
No,
Liquid oxygen, liquid hydrogen,
we don't know that.
but it lubricates
A little,
because the life is very low there.
yes.
Life is very low.
Maybe half an hour or 40 minutes.
That high? I thought it was to 30 seconds or something.
Trying is one for that.
But it is changing because in the past we used to have each time a new rocket to send a satellite. Now you can reuse the engines and the rocket, everything. Then what we did in the past should not be the good design for the future. You cannot change all the bearings after a single launch. You have to keep the same elements. I think this remains open discussion. Then maybe the first step will be to characterize the tribological properties of this type of liquid, to know the properties.
Those are known
Sorry.
for liquid oxygen and liquid hydrogen.
Basically, I don't work in the area of rocketing and bearings, but I assume that they don't depend on this liquid hydrogen oxygen for film formation between the bars and races. For lubrication, they use some solid lubricant in the cage. Maybe Teflon.
Teflon at that temperature,
I think it was.
And now today I don't know, but in the past in France they didn't use solid lubricant. It was only pure hydrogen or pure oxygen to lubricate the bearings. And when they got a failure in the past, it was mostly due to bad design of the bearings or of the system, more than a tribological problem. They had at least one failure close to a bad design of the bearing. One of the first Ariane launcher, Ariane 4, I think, one of the first one. Do you have any other question?
Sir, in slide 41, in the graph, it can be observed that the film thickness is more for high to contact pressure. 41. So here, if we see that if, for high to contact pressure, film thickness is more. But when we are doing this from Grublin's equation, if we increase the load in that equation, so we are saying that the film thickness decreases in that equation. The value that we are getting from that Excel sheet. So if we increase the load here, so the film thickness would decreasing. But here it is opposite to that.
Okay.
So these are from experiments.
No, this is a simulation.
equation.
In fact, okay, this point is for the highest pressure. Then the film thickness is 4. Okay. And when you decrease the contact pressure, the film thickness will increase, which is following the theory. There is no problem. The fact is here, at the beginning, the film thickness is smaller, which is normal, but because the viscosity is higher, it is more difficult for the lubricant to flow away from the contact. This is why it takes a long time to move away, and then very quickly, the film thickness is higher at high contact pressure than for low contact pressure.
So that equation is valid for these starting points only. The Grublin's equation.
I think these trends are valid for any type of situation. it's just the starting point corresponds to the stationary solution given by all of the formulas that you have, and after the decrease of the film thickness depends on the previous relation that I've shown before, and which depends on the viscosity. Then higher is the viscosity, smaller is the decrease of the film thickness.
So Airtel's model, did it, the minimum film thickness, that constriction, did it,
No, they consider that is a flat surface.
they just assume it?
Yes. In fact, you have to look at their paper or in the detail, but the principle is you have a gap between two surfaces, and you calculate the flow between the two parallel surfaces. When the gap is very large, the flow produces a very small pressure. When you integrate the pressure, you will not have the normal load. Then you have to decrease the gap until you reach when you integrate the normal load. And that gives you the solution. But you assume that is a flat surface. As I said before, we did some comparison. When you have a very high load and a very low rolling speed, for example, the solution is perfect, is excellent, because it tends to be the Hertzian solution. And now, if you have a low load or a very high speed, you have a peak of pressure at the exit, and also you have a pressure which start to build in the convergent far away from the contact. Then there is some difference compared to the Hertz solution. Typically, you can see here, for example, here, then lower is the speed in red, better is the solution, is closer to the Hertz solution, and also to the Hertel and Grubin solution. This is the effect of the speed. Then, of course, higher is the speed, you can observe more difference, and it's the same for the effect of the load. You can see here. For very high load, there is almost no peak of pressure, and in this simulation, we consider the fluid as incompressible. If you consider it compressible, the peak of pressure is lower. Then here, this is the solution is different from the dry contact solution, but this one is very close to the dry contact solution. This is why we can use Hertz theory to predict the size of the contact and also the pressure within the contact, even for something which is lubricated.
Sir, are similar models available for predicting the film thickness for grease lubrication also?
For?
Predicting the film thickness for grease lubrication.
Yes, because for grease, you take only the properties of the base oil. Then this is how you do. Okay. Now, if you want to go deeper, there is some problems with grease, or for buying, because when you have repeated movement of the balls, the lubricant flow away from the contact, from the track, and it takes some time to come back. Okay. Then you have also to consider what we call the position of the meniscus at the entrance, or the starvation coefficient. Okay. In this simulation, we assume that you have a full film before the contact, but you can imagine that this is what I call the Moïse effect. You know, the guy that caused the Red Sea. Then when you put your finger in the butter or in the grease, after the finger you have a furrow, valley, and then it takes some time for the oil to come back. Then when you have a grease lubrication bearing, the first ball see a lot of oil, and the second one less oil and less oil. And the grease acts as a reservoir for the base oil. Then there is some starvation effect that could be considered. But this has been very well studied by many researchers, including in the lab Ton Lubrecht many years ago, and there is some model for that. And because here this is a 2D model, but for that you can also implement the entrance film thickness, and you can see the effect of that on the solution. But it's complicated to know the starvation coefficient and the exact everything is, yes. You may have a decrease of 10%, 20%, but it's difficult to say more. Okay.
Any more questions? I think we can, because it's about 4:30, right? We can go out and have tea if you want to discuss.